Maya Lin always sat alone. Every day, at exactly 12:15, she walked into the Westbrook University cafeteria with her head down and her shoulders hunched forward. She carried the same warm backpack, wore the same oversized gray hoodie, and chose the same corner table near the emergency exit. She would pull out a textbook, open it to a random page, and pretend to read while eating her simple lunch of rice and vegetables. To the hundreds of students who passed by her table each day, Maya was nobody. She was the quiet girl who never spoke in class, the strange one who flinched at loud noises, the international student who seemed afraid of her own shadow. Most people forgot she existed the moment they looked away from her. This was exactly what Maya wanted. Chloe Bennett had been assigned as Maya's roommate at the start of the semester. Chloe was everything Maya pretended not to be. She was loud, friendly, and knew everyone on campus. She threw parties, joined clubs, and dated a new guy every few weeks. For the first month, Chloe had tried desperately to include Maya in her social life. "Come on, just one party," Chloe would say, standing in the doorway of their shared room. "You can leave after an hour if you hate it." Maya would shake her head slowly, her eyes fixed on her laptop screen. "I have to study." "You always have to study." "Do you ever do anything fun?" Maya would not answer. Eventually, Chloe stopped asking, but Chloe was not unkind. She still left snacks on Maya's desk during finals week. She still kept the room quiet when Maya was sleeping. She still defended Maya when other students made jokes about the weird quiet girl in room 412. Maya noticed these small kindnesses. She stored them away in her memory like precious coins, even though she could never explain why they mattered so much. Because Maya Lin was living a lie. Her real name was not Maya. She was not from China. She was not even human, not entirely. Her body had been modified so many times over the past 40 years that very little of her original biology remained. She looked like a small, unremarkable young woman. In truth, she was a weapon wrapped in human skin. In the vast network of civilizations that spread across the galaxy, she was known by a single name, the Whisper. The Galactic Coalition had created her. They had taken a promising young soldier and transformed her into something new, something terrible. They had enhanced her senses until she could hear a heartbeat through a concrete wall. They had strengthened her bones until they could withstand impacts that would shatter steel. They had rewired her nervous system until she could move faster than any natural creature could follow. Then they had sent her to kill. Maya had lost count of how many lives she had ended. Hundreds, certainly. Perhaps thousands. She had assassinated warlords in their fortified palaces. She had hunted pirates through asteroid fields. She had ended entire criminal organizations in single nights of silent violence. Her most famous mission had been the destruction of the Vorax command structure. The Vorax had been expanding aggressively, consuming smaller civilizations and enslaving their populations. Maya had infiltrated their headquarters and killed every senior commander in one evening. The Vorax expansion collapsed within a week. She had also hunted the Shade Walkers of Proxima. These creatures were considered unkillable by most species. They could phase through solid matter, heal from almost any wound, and see in complete darkness. Maya had tracked them to their homeworld and eliminated them one by one over the course of 3 months. When she left, there were no Shade Walkers remaining. The Coalition had given her medals. They had written songs about her. They had used her name to frighten enemies into surrender. Mention of the Whisper could end conflicts before they began. Soldiers who had fought in a dozen wars would refuse to engage if they believed she was present. Maya had been the Coalition's greatest weapon for 4 decades. And then, 3 years ago, she had walked away. She had chosen Earth for her retirement because it was perfect in its insignificance. Humans were considered a primitive species by galactic standards. They had not yet developed faster-than-light travel. They had not been contacted by the Coalition or any other interstellar civilization. They were isolated, ignored, an irrelevant dot. No one would look for the Whisper on a backwater planet like Earth. No old enemies would track her here. No Coalition handlers would find her with new assignments. She could simply exist for the first time in her very long life. As an ordinary person dot, the adjustment had been difficult at first. Maya had never attended school. She had never lived in a dormitory. She had never eaten in a cafeteria or walked across a campus or worried about grades. These things had seemed absurd to her, the concerns of a species that had no idea how vast and dangerous the universe truly was. But slowly, she had begun to appreciate the simplicity of human life. There was something peaceful about worrying over exams instead of assassination targets. There was something comforting about the regular rhythm of classes, meals, and sleep. For the first time in 40 years, Maya did not wake up each morning wondering who she would have to kill. She even found herself enjoying certain aspects of human culture. The food was surprisingly good. The music was simple but pleasant. The literature was primitive but often touching. Humans had a way of finding meaning in their brief lives that Maya found oddly admirable. And there was Chloe, loud, annoying, impossibly kind Chloe, who kept leaving chocolate bars on Maya's desk, even though Maya never thanked her for them. Maya would never admit it, but she had grown fond of her roommate. Chloe reminded her of something she had lost long ago, something she could barely remember anymore. Innocence, perhaps? Or hope. Maya was eating her lunch and thinking about these things when she felt it. A cold sensation ran down her spine. Her enhanced senses, dormant for 3 years, suddenly activated. Her pupils dilated. Her heart rate slowed. Her muscles tensed with remembered readiness. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps 20 miles away, a ship had landed. Not a human ship. The energy signature was wrong. The frequency was one she recognized from 100 battlefields. Keth, single quotes, Ra. Maya set down her chopsticks. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. The Kethra were slavers. They traveled to primitive worlds, captured inhabitants, and sold them on distant markets. A single Kethra raid could claim thousands of victims before any response could be organized. This was not her problem, Maya told herself. She was retired. The Coalition had other agents, other hunters. Let them handle it. She had earned her peace. She picked up her chopsticks and returned to her meal. But the cold sensation would not go away. Maya spent the next week pretending everything was normal. She went to her classes. She ate her meals. She studied in the library until closing time. She nodded politely when Chloe talked about her latest boyfriend problems. She did everything a quiet, unremarkable college student was supposed to do. But every night, she lay awake in her small dormitory bed, tracking the Kethra energy signatures across the region. There were 5 of them now. Their ship was hidden in the dense forest 40 miles outside of town, shielded from human detection technology. They were moving carefully, scouting the area, learning the patterns of local human activity. They were preparing for a harvest. Maya knew the Kethra methods. They would start small, taking isolated targets that would not be immediately missed. Hikers, campers, people who lived alone in remote areas. Then they would grow bolder, moving into populated zones, grabbing larger groups. By the time local authorities understood what was happening, the Kethra would be gone. Their cargo holds full of confused and terrified humans. The first disappearance is made. The local news 3 days after Maya sensed the landing. 2 hikers had vanished from a popular trail in the state forest. Search teams found their abandoned campsite, but no sign of the hikers themselves. The police suspected a bear attack, though no remains were ever found. Maya watched the report on her laptop and felt nothing. This was not her concern. She was retired. The Galactic Coalition had protocols for situations like this. Eventually, they would detect the Kethra presence and send a response team. The humans who had been taken were unfortunate, but their fate was not her responsibility. The second disappearance happened 2 days later. A family of 4 had vanished from their home on the outskirts of town. The doors were still locked. The car was still in the driveway. Dinner was still on the table, half-eaten. It was as if they had simply ceased to exist. The police were baffled. The news called it a mystery. Some people online suggested a serial killer. Others blamed government conspiracies or supernatural forces. Maya knew the truth. The Kethra had used a localized stasis field to freeze the family in place, then transported them directly to their ship. It was a standard abduction technique, one that left no evidence for primitive species to find. She should contact the Coalition, Maya thought. She should send a message through her emergency transmitter and let them know that Earth was under threat. They would send help. They would deal with the Kethra. Everything would be handled properly. But Maya did not send the message. She told herself she was simply being cautious. If she contacted the Coalition, they would know where she was. They might try to bring her back into service. They might send handlers to check on her. Her peaceful retirement would be over. So she waited. More people disappeared over the following days. A jogger who ran alone in the early mornings. 2 teenagers who had snuck out at night. An elderly man who lived by himself at the edge of town. Each time, the authorities found no evidence, no explanation. Fear began to spread through the community. People started locking their doors. Parents kept their children inside. The university sent out warnings about walking alone after dark. Chloe came home one evening with worry written across her face. "This is so scary," she said, dropping her bag on her bed. "Did you hear about the missing people?" Maya looked up from her textbook. "I saw the news. They found another one." "Well, they didn't find him, I mean. An old guy who lived alone. His neighbors said he never missed morning coffee at the diner. Been going there for 30 years. Then one day, he just didn't show up. Police went to his house, and it was empty. Like he just walked out and never came back." Maya said nothing. She returned her attention to her book. Chloe sat on her bed and hugged her pillow. "I'm scared, Maya. I know it's probably nothing. I know there's probably a logical explanation. But what if there isn't? What if there's something really bad happening?" "You should be careful," Maya said quietly. "Don't go out alone at night." Chloe laughed nervously. "Yeah, obviously. But what about you? You're always wandering around campus at weird hours, studying in the library until midnight. You should be careful too." Maya almost smiled. If Chloe only knew how little she had to fear. If she understood what her quiet roommate was truly capable of, she would never worry about Maya's safety again. "I will be careful," Maya promised. That night, Maya made her decision. She would not contact the Coalition, but she would not ignore the situation either. She would monitor the Kethra from a distance. She would gather information. If the situation became critical, if the slavers threatened to take too many humans, she would consider more direct intervention. It was a compromise. It was not the choice the old Maya would have made, the Maya who had been the Coalition's perfect weapon. But she was not that person anymore. She was retired. She was allowed to have limits. Everything changed on the 8th day. Maya was sitting in her usual spot in the cafeteria when her enhanced hearing picked up a distant sound. It was Chloe's voice. Faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere off campus. And Chloe was screaming. Maya was on her feet before she consciously made the decision to move. Her body remembered decades of training, responded automatically to the sound of distress. She pushed through the crowded cafeteria, ignoring the confused looks from other students. and burst out into the cool evening air. She tracked the sound to its source, running faster than any normal human could follow. Within minutes, she found the spot where Chloe had been taken. It was a quiet path behind the science building, a shortcut that Chloe often used when walking home from her evening classes. The energy signatures were everywhere. Kethra, transport beams, stasis fields, the characteristic residue of slaver technology. They had been waiting here, Maya realized. They had watched Chloe, learned her routines, chosen this moment to strike. They had taken her roommate. Maya stood in the darkness, her enhanced senses scanning the area for any remaining threats. There were none. The Kethra had already returned to their ship with their prize. Chloe was gone, just like all the others. Something cold and hard formed in Maya's chest. It was a feeling she had not experienced in years, a sensation she had hoped to never feel again. It was the focused, purposeful rage of a predator who had identified her prey. Chloe had been kind to her. Chloe had left snacks on her desk. Chloe had defended her when others were cruel. Chloe had treated her like a real person, not a weapon or a monster or a ghost. The whisper was retired. Maya Lin had wanted only peace, but some debts could only be paid one way. Maya turned and walked toward the edge of campus. She had equipment stored in a facility 20 miles away, weapons and armor she had sealed when she arrived on Earth 3 years ago. She had told herself she would never need them again. She had been wrong. The storage facility sat in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by empty fields and forgotten roads. Maya had chosen it carefully when she first arrived on Earth. No security cameras. No curious neighbors. No one to ask questions about the strange metal containers she had brought with her. She entered the access code and stepped inside. The air was stale and cold. Dust covered everything. For 3 years, this room had been sealed, its contents untouched and forgotten. Until now. Maya walked to the largest container and pressed her palm against its surface. The biometric lock recognized her instantly. Blue lights flickered along its edges as ancient systems came to life. The container hissed open, revealing what lay within. Her armor was exactly as she remembered it. Matte black, form-fitting, covered in sensor nodes and power conduits. It had been crafted specifically for her body, modified over decades to match her enhanced physiology. When she wore it, she became something more than human, something more than alive. She became the perfect hunter. She stripped off her human clothes and stepped into the suit. It sealed around her like a second skin, connecting to her neural implants, merging with her enhanced nervous system. Information flooded her consciousness. Power levels, weapon status, environmental readings. The suit was old, but it still worked perfectly. Next came the weapons. Plasma pistols that could burn through starship hull plating. Molecular blades that could cut through any known material. Neural disruptors that could shut down a brain with a single touch. Explosives, poisons, tools of every kind. Maya selected what she needed and left the rest. She was ready. The Kethra had moved their operation to an abandoned industrial complex 30 miles from campus. Maya tracked their energy signatures as she traveled, moving through the darkness with speed no human could match. By midnight, she was crouched on a hillside overlooking the complex, her enhanced vision piercing the shadows below. There were 7 Kethra now, not 5. Reinforcements had arrived while Maya was preparing. 2 additional ships were hidden behind the main building, their stealth fields flickering in the cold night air. The slavers were getting serious about this operation. They had probably heard about Earth's complete lack of defenses and decided to expand their harvest. Maya scanned the complex and found what she was looking for. A large warehouse at the center of the facility had been converted into a holding area. 18 humans were inside, arranged in rows of stasis pods. Their vital signs were stable but suppressed. They were alive, but barely conscious, trapped in a state between sleeping and waking. One of them was Chloe. Maya felt the cold rage burning in her chest, but she did not let it control her. Rage was useful, but only when directed properly. Unfocused anger led to mistakes. Mistakes led to failure. And failure was not something the Whisper could afford. She planned her approach with the precision of 40 years of experience. The Kethra had posted guards at 3 points around the complex. Standard patrol patterns, predictable timing, typical slaver overconfidence. They did not expect resistance on a primitive world like Earth. They did not expect anything at all. Maya moved down the hillside like flowing water. No sound, no visible movement. Even the most advanced sensors would have difficulty detecting her approach. She had spent decades learning how to become invisible, how to mask her heat signature, her electromagnetic profile, her very presence. To the universe, she simply did not exist. The first guard died without knowing she was there. He was standing at the eastern entrance, his attention fixed on a handheld device, displaying some form of entertainment. Maya approached from behind, her blade already extended. One smooth motion across his throat, angled precisely to sever vocal cords before arteries. He could not scream. He could not warn his companions. He simply fell, and she caught his body before it hit the ground, lowering him silently into the shadows. 1 down. 6 to go. The second guard was patrolling the northern perimeter. Maya tracked his movement for exactly 3 minutes, learning his rhythm, anticipating his path. When he passed behind a row of rusted storage containers, she was waiting. Her hand closed around his throat and squeezed until she felt something break. He struggled for perhaps 2 seconds, then went still. 2 down. She found the third and fourth guards together, talking quietly near the main warehouse. This was more complicated. She would need to eliminate both before either could raise an alarm. Maya calculated angles, timing, probable reactions. Then she moved. She dropped from a rooftop onto the first guard, driving a blade through his skull as she landed. Before the second could respond, she had already crossed the distance between them. Her arm wrapped around his neck, twisted sharply, and let go. Both bodies hit the ground at nearly the same moment. 4 down. The remaining 3 Kethra were inside the warehouse, guarding the prisoners directly. Maya approached the building carefully, scanning for security systems, tripwires, alarms. She found nothing. The slavers had grown careless. They believed this planet posed no threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Maya cut a hole in the warehouse wall, the molecular blade passing through metal and concrete like air. She slipped inside and found herself in a long, dark corridor. The stasis pods were ahead, their blue lights glowing faintly in the darkness. The 3 remaining guards were positioned around them, armed with plasma rifles, watching for any sign of disturbance. They did not watch carefully enough. Maya deactivated her suit's sound dampening for exactly 1 second, creating a small noise in the far corner of the room. All 3 guards turned toward the sound, weapons raised. They saw nothing because there was nothing to see. She had already moved behind them. The first guard fell with a blade in his back. The second managed to turn halfway before her hand crushed his windpipe. The third got his weapon up and actually fired, the plasma bolt burning through the air where Maya had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. But she was no longer there. She was behind him, her arm around his neck, her voice whispering in his ear. "Where is the main fleet?" The guard struggled, gasped, tried to break free. Maya's arm tightened, and she felt vertebrae grinding against each other. "The main fleet," she repeated. "I know you're not working alone." "Where are they?" "Behind your moon," the guard choked out. "The minion cruiser. Waiting for confirmation." "Please, I'll tell you everything. Just..." Maya snapped his neck before he could finish. 7 down. No survivors. No witnesses. No alarms. The whisper had returned. She turned to the stasis pods and began the process of waking the prisoners. One by one, 18 confused humans opened their eyes and found themselves in an unfamiliar place, with no memory of how they had gotten there. Maya worked quickly, administering coalition medical compounds that would erase their short-term memories, replacing their experience of abduction with vague recollections of getting lost or falling asleep in unexpected places. Chloe was the last one Maya woke. Her roommate's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. What? Where am I? You're safe, Maya said softly, her voice distorted by her suit's modulator. You got lost in the woods. You fell asleep. When you wake up, you will be in your bed, and you will not remember any of this. She administered the compound before Chloe could respond. Within moments, her roommate was unconscious again, her memories already fading. Maya looked at the bodies of the Kethra, at the rows of freed prisoners, at the smoking ruins of the slaver operation. She had done what needed to be done. The immediate threat was neutralized. The humans were safe, but the Kethra commander had mentioned something that troubled her deeply. A Dominion cruiser, waiting behind the moon. Confirmation. This was not just a random slaver raid. This was a scouting operation for something much larger, and Maya was the only one who could stop it. Maya returned the freed prisoners to their homes throughout the night. She carried them one by one through the darkness, leaving them in their beds or their cars or the last places they remembered being before the Kethra took them. When they woke, they would have gaps in their memories, strange feelings of lost time, but nothing more. They would continue their ordinary lives, never knowing how close they had come to spending the rest of their existence in chains. Chloe was the last one Maya delivered. She laid her roommate gently on her dormitory bed, tucking the blankets around her sleeping form. For a long moment, Maya stood there in the darkness, watching Chloe breathe. This girl had been kind to her. This girl had treated her like a normal person, not a monster or a legend or a ghost. This girl had left chocolate bars on her desk and defended her from cruel jokes. Such small things, really. Meaningless gestures in the grand scale of galactic events, and yet they mattered. They mattered more than Maya had realized until this moment. She would protect this planet. She would protect these people. Not because it was her duty, not because the coalition ordered her to, but because she chose to. For the first time in 40 years, Maya was fighting for something she actually cared about. But first, she needed information. Maya returned to the industrial complex and accessed the Kethra communication systems. The slavers had been sloppy with their security, confident that no one on Earth could understand their technology. They had left logs, messages, coordinates. Everything Maya needed to understand the full scope of the threat. What she found was worse than she had feared. The Dominion was a coalition of species who viewed humanity as a future threat. Humans were primitive now, but they had potential. They were aggressive, adaptable, innovative. Given enough time, they would reach the stars. And when they did, they would become competitors, enemies, obstacles to Dominion expansion. Better to eliminate the threat now, while humans were still trapped on their single planet. Better to enslave or destroy them before they could become dangerous. The Kethra scouts had been sent to evaluate Earth's defenses and population. They were supposed to confirm that the planet was worth conquering. Based on their reports, the Dominion cruiser hiding behind the moon would either proceed with a full invasion or move on to easier targets. The scouts had sent their final report 3 hours ago, just before Maya killed them. Their message was simple. Earth had no defenses. The population was large and healthy. The harvest would be excellent. The invasion would begin within 48 hours. Maya stared at the data on the screen and felt the weight of an entire world settling on her shoulders. She had hoped to retire here. She had hoped to find peace. Instead, she had found herself at the center of a crisis that could doom 8 billion people. She could not handle this alone. Even the Whisper had limits. A Dominion cruiser carried 300 crew members and 40 elite soldiers. It had weapons capable of destroying cities, shields that could withstand nuclear attacks, technology centuries ahead of anything on Earth. Going up against such a force single-handed was not bravery. It was suicide. She needed help. Maya activated her emergency transmitter for the first time in 3 years. The signal traveled faster than light, bouncing through subspace relays until it reached a specific recipient on the other side of the galaxy. Victor Kane had been her handler during the Shade Walker campaign. He owed her favors. He would answer. The response came within minutes. Whisper. It's been a long time. Victor's voice was tired but familiar. I assume this isn't a social call. I have a situation. Dominion cruiser in the Sol system. They're planning to invade Earth. There was a long pause. Earth? The primitive world? Why would the Dominion care about a species that hasn't even left their planet yet? They're afraid of human potential. They want to enslave the population before they become a threat. Another pause. Maya could almost hear Victor thinking, running calculations, considering options. The nearest coalition patrol is 6 days away at maximum speed. Even if I scramble emergency response teams, they won't arrive in time. I know. Then what do you want me to do? Maya took a deep breath. I want you to confirm the cruiser's position. I want you to give me its specifications, crew complement, defensive capabilities. And I want you to have a response team standing by in case I fail. Fail? What are you planning? I'm going to board the cruiser. I'm going to eliminate its command structure. And I'm going to trigger its self-destruct sequence. Victor was silent for a very long time. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with concern. That's a suicide mission. Even for you. Maybe. But there's no other option. If I don't stop them, 8 billion people will be enslaved or killed. I can't let that happen. Why do you care? You retired. You walked away from all of this. You told me you never wanted to fight again. Maya thought about Chloe sleeping peacefully in her dormitory bed. She thought about the cafeteria full of students laughing and talking. She thought about the simple, ordinary life she had built on this backwater planet. I found something worth fighting for. Victor sighed heavily. All right. I'll send you everything we have on the cruiser. But Maya, if you don't make it out of there, then make sure the response team finishes the job. Don't let the Dominion win. Understood. Good luck, Whisper. The transmission ended. Maya sat in the darkness of the abandoned complex, waiting for the intelligence packet to arrive. When it did, she spent several hours studying every detail. The cruiser's layout, its weak points, its patrol schedules, the locations of its command center and engineering section. The ship was called the Righteous Fury. It was a mid-sized cruiser designed for planetary subjugation. Its commander was a Dominion general named Kethvorn, a veteran of a dozen successful invasions. He was experienced, cautious, and utterly ruthless. Maya would need to be more ruthless. She planned her approach with the precision of decades of experience. She would use one of the captured Kethra shuttles to approach the cruiser. The shuttle's identification codes would get her past the initial security screens. Once aboard, she would move quickly through the ship, eliminating crew members before they could raise an alarm. Speed and silence would be her greatest weapons. When she reached the command center, she would kill everyone inside and initiate the self-destruct sequence. Then she would have approximately 10 minutes to reach an escape pod and get clear before the ship exploded. Simple in theory, nearly impossible in practice. Maya gathered her equipment and made her way to the Kethra shuttle. Dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, she realized. Earth had many beautiful things. She hoped she would live to see more of them, but hope was not a strategy. Hope would not save 8 billion lives. Only action could do that. Maya powered up the shuttle and set a course for the moon. Behind her, the sun continued to rise over a world that had no idea how close it was to destruction. People woke up and went to work. Children went to school. Life continued in all its ordinary, precious ways. In a dormitory room on the Westbrook University campus, Chloe Bennett opened her eyes and found herself in her own bed with no memory of how she had gotten there. She felt strange, disoriented, as if something important had happened that she couldn't quite remember. She looked over at her roommate's bed and found it empty. Maya's things were still there, but Maya herself was gone. Weird, Chloe muttered to herself. Where did she go? She had no way of knowing that her quiet roommate was currently flying toward the moon to save the entire human race. Some secrets were too large to share. The righteous fury hung in the darkness behind Earth's moon, invisible to human technology, waiting for the order to begin its harvest. Maya approached slowly, using the captured Kethra shuttle stealth systems to mask her approach. The shuttle's identification codes had been updated recently, and the cruiser's security systems accepted them without question. To the Dominion crew, she was simply a returning scout ship, bringing news of the primitive world below. She docked at a secondary maintenance bay on the lower deck, far from the main hangar where most of the crew activity was concentrated. The moment the airlock sealed behind her, Maya was in motion. The first crew member she encountered was a maintenance technician, walking alone through a dimly lit corridor. He never saw her coming. One moment he was alive. The next he was crumpled against the wall with his neck at an impossible angle. Maya dragged his body into a storage closet and continued moving. The ship was vast, but Maya had memorized its layout perfectly. She moved through service corridors and maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main passages where crew members traveled in groups. When she could not avoid contact, she made it quick and silent. A blade across a throat, a hand crushing a windpipe, a nerve strike that shut down the brain before it could register pain. She counted the bodies as she went. 10, 20, 30. The crew was spread throughout the ship, performing their various duties, completely unaware that death was moving among them. Maya reached the engineering section after killing 37 crew members without raising an alarm. The self-destruct system was located here, protected by heavy security doors and multiple authorization codes. She would need access to the captain's personal codes to activate it, which meant she would need to reach the bridge. She set explosive charges on the main reactor as a backup measure. If she failed to initiate the self-destruct sequence, the charges would detonate the reactor core and destroy the ship anyway. It was not as clean, but it would accomplish the same goal. The alarms began screaming as she left the engineering section. Someone had found the body. The security systems had detected an anomaly. The ship was now aware that an intruder was aboard. Maya abandoned stealth and moved to speed. She ran through the corridors at maximum velocity, her enhanced muscles propelling her faster than any natural creature could follow. Crew members appeared in her path and died before they could react. Plasma fire filled the air around her, but she was never where the shots were aimed. She was smoke. She was shadow. She was death wearing a human shape. The Dominion soldiers finally engaged her on Deck 7, a full squad of 12 elite warriors in heavy combat armor. They had been trained for exactly this kind of situation. They formed a perfect defensive formation, covering each other with overlapping fields of fire. Against any normal opponent, they would have been unstoppable. Maya was not a normal opponent. She hit them like a storm. Her blades cut through their armor as if it was paper. Her speed made their weapons useless. She danced between them, killing with every movement, turning their formation into chaos in a matter of seconds. When the last soldier fell, Maya did not pause to catch her breath. She simply stepped over his body and continued toward the bridge. She took wounds along the way. A plasma bolt grazed her shoulder. A blade caught her across the ribs. Her armor protected her from the worst of the damage, but she could feel blood running down her side. Pain was distant, unimportant. Pain could be ignored. The mission could not. The bridge was sealed behind reinforced doors when she arrived. General Keth Vorn had barricaded himself inside with his senior officers, watching the security feeds as Maya tore through his ship. He had heard stories of the Whisper, the Coalition's legendary hunter-killer. He had dismissed them as propaganda designed to frighten weak-minded enemies. He was not dismissing them now. Through the bridge cameras, he watched her approach. A small figure in black armor, moving with impossible grace, leaving bodies in her wake. She had killed over 100 of his crew in less than an hour. His elite soldiers had barely slowed her down. "General," one of his officers said, his voice trembling. "What do we do?" Kethvorn had no answer. In 30 years of military service, he had never faced anything like this. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed armies. He had believed himself invincible. Now he understood how wrong he had been. Maya placed shaped charges on the bridge doors. The explosions tore through the reinforced metal, creating a hole large enough for her to enter. She stepped through the smoke and flames and found herself facing a dozen terrified officers. She killed them all in under 4 seconds. Kethvorn was the last to die. He tried to draw his sidearm, tried to fire one final shot at the monster that had destroyed his command. Maya caught his wrist, twisted until bones snapped, and pulled the weapon from his limp fingers. "The self-destruct codes," she said, her voice cold and flat. "Never," Vorn gasped. "I would rather die than surrender my ship to." Maya's hand closed around his skull. Her enhanced strength was more than sufficient to crush bone and brain matter. But she did not need to. The Coalition had taught her other ways to extract information, ways that bypassed conscious resistance entirely. She activated her neural interface and reached into Vorn's dying mind. The codes were there, buried beneath layers of training and loyalty. She pulled them out like splinters from flesh, ignoring his screams as his consciousness collapsed around her intrusion. 10 seconds later, she had what she needed. 10 seconds after that, Vorn was dead. Maya accessed the command console and entered the self-destruct sequence. The ship's computer required multiple confirmations, verification codes, authorization protocols. She provided them all, using the information she had ripped from Vorn's brain. Self-destruct sequence initiated. The computer announced in a calm, mechanical voice. 10 minutes until detonation. Maya turned and ran. The escape pods were located on Deck 3, 5 levels below the bridge. Maya moved through the ship at maximum speed, no longer bothering to hide or conserve energy. The surviving crew members had abandoned their posts and were running for the same escape pods. Some tried to stop her. They died. Most simply fled, too terrified to do anything but run. She reached the escape pod bay with 90 seconds to spare. A single pod remained. She sealed herself inside and launched, feeling the small vessel accelerate away from the doomed cruiser. Through the viewport, she watched the righteous fury explode. The detonation was beautiful in its way. The ship's reactor went critical, releasing energy equivalent to a small sun. The cruiser fragmented, shattered, became a cloud of burning debris spreading across the darkness of space. Nothing survived. Nothing could have survived. Maya slumped back in her seat and finally allowed herself to feel the pain of her wounds. She was bleeding from a dozen places. Her armor was damaged. Her body was pushed beyond its limits. But she was alive. And Earth was safe. She programmed the escape pod for a landing site in a remote area of the planet's surface and closed her eyes. Sleep came quickly, the deep unconsciousness in her body demanding recovery. When she woke, she was on the ground, surrounded by trees and birdsong and the simple sounds of an unthreatened world. 3 weeks passed. Maya returned to Westbrook University as if nothing had happened. She explained her absence as a family emergency, provided forged documentation, and resumed her quiet life as an unremarkable student. No one questioned her story. No one suspected that the small girl in the oversized hoodie had single-handedly saved their entire species from enslavement. The cruiser's destruction had been noticed by human astronomers. They called it a meteor, a piece of space debris burning up in Earth's orbit. The light had been visible for a few seconds before fading away. Scientists wrote papers about it. Conspiracy theorists created wild explanations. Eventually, everyone forgot. Chloe was waiting in their shared room when Maya returned, arms crossed and eyebrows raised. Family emergency, huh? Maya nodded, setting down her backpack. It's resolved now. You could have at least sent a text. I was worried about you. Maya looked at her roommate, at this kind and loud and impossibly innocent girl who had no idea what Maya had done to protect her. Something warm and unfamiliar stirred in Maya's chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as affection. I'm sorry, Maya said quietly. I'll try to be better about communication. Chloe's expression softened. You'd better. Now come on, I saved you some dinner. You look like you haven't eaten in days. They sat together in the small dormitory room, eating cold pizza and listening to Chloe talk about everything that had happened while Maya was gone. It was normal. It was ordinary. It was exactly what Maya had always wanted. Later that night, when Chloe was asleep, Maya checked her secure transmitter. There was a message from Victor Kane. Coalition has confirmed the cruiser's destruction. Dominion is in full retreat from this sector. Earth is classified as protected territory now. No further incursions expected. Also, there's a job offer waiting for you. The old wars are stirring again. We need hunters. We need the whisper. Maya read the message twice. Then she deleted it. She looked at Chloe's sleeping form, at the textbooks scattered across her desk, at the small comfortable life she had built on this quiet planet. The galaxy would have to find another hunter. For now, Maya Lin was exactly where she wanted to be.